Welcome to the OC154 podcast. In this episode 2 of the podcast, we discuss a seminar I attended the day before the recording of this episode, in which Dj Sbu had invited Gareth Cliff to his radio academy, and how the academy felt more like deja vu of all the hustles that Dj Sbu has pursued in the past, rather than a credible academic institution that is aimed at imparting skills and knowledge into the aspiring radio jocks that he claims for it to be. This gets me thinking about whether he is taking advantage of the desperate young people who are trying to get into radio, and whether it would be fair to call him a charlatan. This is nothing close to a one-sided conversation, I can promise you that much. Because H, like many South Africans, consider Dj Sbu to be a really great hustler. They regard him as some kind of an iconoclastic figure, They see him as this brave black brother who always challenges the status quo and swimming against the tide at all times. Others even see his entrepreneurial spirit as some kind of a threat to the big established corporations, as he himself also likes to preach. And to a certain extent, I do agree with this sentiment. Dj Sbu is a really street smart guy. This then opens a broader conversation about how the way the socio-economic structures are set up creates a breeding ground, if you like, for the DJ Sbu-like characters and some of the shenanigans we see in the Bazalani churches in the country with their dodgy pastors. I really like this episode of the podcast. It is what I had envisioned the format and the content of this podcast to become. And I'm glad to see that our conversations are fast taking that shape so early on. H and I have no media or broadcasting experience, you see. So we do expect there to be some teething problems in these early days. But we also hope that this rawness and sincerity of our conversations is what can get you connected with us better. Our style was not contaminated by any mainstream media training, like you see with many prominent podcasts in the country today. So I hope this can be a platform for some alternative views. With that being said though, this is not to say H and I see the world the same. In fact, the opposite is true. Individually, H and I engage with very differing content. We are inspired by a vast variety of thinkers, and we have had very different lives, as you heard in our first episode. And these have obviously molded our worldviews accordingly. But what we don't see enough of today, not just in South Africa, but the world over, is having our worldviews challenged and questioned often. We live in our own little echo chambers. We only follow the people who already affirm our worldviews on social media. We are friends with people who already agree with us, and we often feel the pressure to take on the dominant and popular views of the communities we live in, both in real life and online. So for me, it is quite a privilege to be able to have a conversation with someone I don't agree with on most things, but whom I greatly respect, who also happens to be my friend. I get my views to be pressure tested against some strong opposing views, and sometimes my mind even changed about things. I deliberately refer to this as a privilege because I know that this is not something that many of you have access to out there. When you share a different view with someone, you are most likely to get insulted and dismissed as stupid, a bigot, and all the horrible things under the sun. Or the best case scenario, being told that you don't like hearing the truth just because you disagree with them, while they think they have exclusive access to the truth because of the information they consume. My ultimate dream for this podcast is to see a community of thinkers with diverse views come together and have healthy conversations and debates and engage in intellectually honest critical thinking that is not polluted by ideologies, which we are all prone to, knowingly but sometimes unwittingly. These ideologies can be very limiting and can give us a false sense of having the answers to everything because they create a simplified single narrative about this complex thing called life. Hearing the other view can only sharpen yours. And because H is my friend and not some random Twitter handle, I get to listen to him differently, more generously, because I know he's not an idiot. And well, I can only hope he thinks the same about me. But to hear him articulate how he sees the world, which is not the same as I do, challenges me to go back and poke holes in the views that I cherish, to also consider other factors that may elude me time and again. I'll make an example with that conversation we had about Dj Sbu. The question of structures and systems in the country is not something that was top of my mind when I entered that conversation. How these systems may have increased the likelihood of Dj Sbu to become the hustler he is today is something that I honestly did not factor into my opinion. But now I had to think about it. Do I necessarily agree with H entirely about it? No. But at least now I know it is a factor that matters when you have a conversation about what may even seem like a simple and straightforward social phenomenon. I will be honest though, this is not easy to keep up. It can get really frustrating at times. As you'll hear later in the podcast when I ask H, what will progress look like? He keeps throwing me with a question of how did that come about, which I found genuinely confusing. And this can also be attributed to the fact that we live in such different worlds that we almost speak a different language. Sorry for the long ass intro, but I know it is worth a while. I hope you enjoyed this thought-provoking episode of the podcast as much as we did. H, have you been following DJ Sbu recently?
No, I can't say, not like recently. Such
Yeah.
that I saw it a month ago. No, I've just been seeing the posts, the normal more fire posts.
That man is a charlatan.
Awa, awa. I totally disagree with.
Yeah. So he has this what can I call it? A radio academy thingy. I don't know if you remember Bomek G's podcast. There was this guy, I think Kwena, that they made fun of, who called in and tried to make a joke.
And he was there at when they were with Mashavel.
Yeah, where they had the branch thing. Because when he called, that's the first thing he actually said. He said, but he keeps saying, I'm with part of DJ Sbu, what, but I wouldn't
He's
pick
a
up
massive
what.
he's a massive metro. He does a show there.
Yes. So DJ Sbu has
GT.
this, what is it? Radio training college
Yes.
academy thing. So,
Yes.
so during the week, I saw Gareth Cliff post and say he'll be doing a seminar on radio and broadcasting and all that. I'm like, okay, I need to join this, which was yesterday.
You
So
did.
so I sent the email, said, yeah, then they sent me a link, I joined to find out that it is hosted by that radio academy that DJ Sbu is doing.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And I was also there.
Cliff is a guest on.
Yeah, he's a guest. So I think they host these seminars with like DJ Sbu's friends. I think later they even brought in Tando Tabete, and I think they've hosted others in the past that I was not aware of, and I think they keep hosting them.
It's still hosted around radio. It's still talking about radio with these guys.
Yes, it's like it's for the academy. So it's the students, DJ Sbu students that are studying radio. So he brings in people, but then that one he made it public. I guess it's some kind of marketing for the
yeah.
Yeah. I don't know, man. It doesn't. I mean, it's just collecting money, man. Can we start to appreciate that DJ Sbu is a hustler, bruh?
You joined it, man.
Yeah, I joined it. No, not the. I joined the seminar. I was part of the seminar throughout.
How was it?
Yeah, I mean, it was Gareth, as I know him. He didn't say anything I haven't heard before, in terms of radio. But because he was now invited to talk about radio, which, from how I've listened to his podcast, is very. He's for the idea of radio is dead. Whatever, people should move to
He said it on his podcast.
Exactly. Yeah. But now I guess he can't say that when he's talking to people who are trying to get into radio.
And who are at massive metro. I'm sure it's kids are there being trained
to get into radio. So it will be really putting a middle finger to DJ Sbu if he comes there and say, guys, radio is dead. So he changed the tune in a way to say times are moving Can have content in any way. It can be on radio, it can be on podcast. So that's kind of the rather than podcast is taking over radio, but rather to say radio is evolving. So
guys, the ship you are in is sinking, guys. Really, jump ship.
Yeah. It didn't. I mean, it didn't make sense to say that. I don't know, man, because so they still do weird things that are part of. Sounds like they were told in class to come and do in that seminar. So firstly, Dj Sbu doesn't host. He just sits there, keep quiet, and he nominated one or two of his students to host. Okay, which is fine. I mean, that's training. You need to learn how to engage and ask questions and all that. And there's this weird thing they do about when you come in to ask a question, you have to sound like you're on radio. You say the time and you say you're watching whatever that academy is called. It's like, so I'm like, so that's what they're teaching in class. I don't know, man.
Oh, it's very performative. They're performing.
Not just the performative side of it. Like, I don't even think DJ Sbu believes that stuff you need to know when you need to get into radio. I don't think he truly believes, like, okay, the best form of training is to, okay, go on, sound like you're on radio. But even after Gareth himself said during the seminar, like, guys, sort of to say we need to move with the times, the stuff they used to do on radio, or because someone asked something about the voice, like, so Gareth, how do you get your voice to, what's the word she used? Forgot, but something about the voice. It's like, yeah, it used to be a thing back in the days that
and I'm sure they sound, I'm sure they sound like it too when they ask these questions.
Yeah, they have to. They're asked to. But they don't. To be fair, they're not put on a voice, but they put on a. Okay, welcome to it. They have to say the time each. They have to do it. It's not just like, okay, this one decided to use to say the time. Everyone is asked to. So when someone asks that question about the voice, because it's like, yeah, back in the days, it used to be a thing. A radio voice used to be a thing.
Yeah.
But now it's not. Now we're interested in what you have to say. You have to be interesting. You can't just say the time, tell us the weather and the traffic.
Sure.
After saying that, everyone who asked the question after that was still saying the time. This is not even now in a radio show anymore. This is now in a seminar. I'm like, yeah. And everyone there is so that they're not that good a guy. He asks a question. He sort of complains because he was hurt by what Bomekji said to him. I don't know. Do you remember? Do you remember them saying he wouldn't make it in radio? I don't remember them saying that in particular. They just made fun of his shitty jokes.
I know, man. He's got a shitty personality, man.
Yeah, he does. Well, I also agree. But I'm saying, did Bomekji ever, in dissing him, ever say he won't make it in radio? Yeah. So when you're listening to Bomekji, when they were dissing him, did they ever say that he won't make it in radio? I think they just made fun of his shitty jokes. I don't remember them saying he won't make it in radio. Or
in a joking way, they did say, this is why you can't want to be on radio and you are like this. I think that's what they were saying.
Oh, along those lines. So that man was hurt.
Because his personality is not right, man. Like, so I remember when I listened to
I blame that academy.
I could tell that he's got a bit of a vibe, man. When he said he's from Massive Metro, I got it. Because so remember when the Mashavela podcast, I actually didn't watch it.
Yeah.
I was running and I was listening to the podcast as I'm running. And I'm like, man, this guy, man. What kind of guy is this? So I'm not even seeing him. I then watch just to see that guy. All I went to, who is this guy? Like, it makes sense. He looks like that kind of guy. It's just a weird, it's forceful, unnecessarily. You can't read. So he called onto the show this week when they were doing those calls,
and reminded them that was that guy from the branch. Yeah.
And Saul's face, I remember, changed. He even held his cheek.
Like, oh God.
Then they gave him the opportunity to ask 2 questions. I don't remember exactly what he asked.
Yes, I can't remember either.
But he was offside.
He was trying to be funny. I remember him trying to be funny with the questions.
But not in a real funny way. You get what I'm saying? Like, it's I don't know. It's a tough thing to explain now. But hey, man, there's a personality thing with that boy that it's tough not to remember him and his pap ways. Let me actually get what he said. Like his reading of the room is bad, and he thinks he's more interesting than he really is.
Yeah. So this is where my big accusation of DJ Sbu being a charlotte. Those people have praised them. So he asked a question about that. He said he called in into Ntjebe's podcast and they said he won't make it into radio. And DJ Sbu being the motivational guy trying to pump up the upcoming guys. And he's not the only one. He's just weird because he thinks he's funny. I think that's his problem. It's weird enough what's going on there about people trying to fight like that. But him, I think he's the clown of the classroom kind of guy.
Oh, sure.
So it makes it worse. Like he's this weird guy trying to be funny at the same time. As weird as it is already in that setup. So he asked that question and everyone there gets praised. Everyone is good. Everyone is gonna make it. I was like, oh, is this a cult? What am I watching?
Nah.
But DJ Sbu is a hustler, bruh. Can we admit that? DJ Sbu is a hustler. DJ Sbu is strategic about these things. I'm not saying it's crook stealing them of their money or anything. That's not what I'm accusing him of. But he doesn't mind that they are that gullible.
Wait. Let me actually get what he said.
Yeah,
because he's an interesting character. Let me see there by McG what he said. Why can't I do this now? Yeah, I think they asked him because I guess they were taking questions.
Yeah,
we can discuss what they were doing some other time as well.
Yeah.
Speaking of taking questions,
Eish.
taking calls. So they actually remembered him, and they gave him like 2 chances. And
Yeah.
says he was annoyed.
Yeah, and he is. And annoying is not even the right way. Like that word you're struggling to find is the word. Like he's weird about, but the weirdness comes from there. I'm telling you, man. The weirdness comes from that academy that DJ Sbu is running and making them pay 3,000 or whatever how much the course is.
Oh, so you're saying someone is enabling this kind of behavior?
Yeah, because them. If you join the H, you are promised that you're going to be big in media because obviously DJ Sbu is that guy who pushes like he's a big name. Those who don't like him are scared of his success. They don't like to see black excellence. He's that guy. Let's not fool around. So he pushes the same mentality to them. It felt like a church. In fact, to a point where when they start the seminar, they pray. They start the seminar with the prayer.
Sbu has always prayed though, because he did open his even radio show with prayer. So maybe that's an element, but I don't think it's necessarily linked. Maybe it's my own biasness to prayer here.
Which is fine, but still, it still felt like a church.
Church, as you're saying.
It felt like a
the symbol of church is the prayer.
Yeah. You know how in church, God loves them, and your enemies are going to get punished by God, and your neighbor who hates you, and your problems are going to get resolved, and your life is going to turn around. That's what it was sounding like.
Yeah, well,
just
that
this time around.
I must say, depending on the church you go to. But I hear what you're meaning. So I don't want to make
but I'm saying that
quintessential explanation. Like a typical church is like this.
Okay, Bazalani church. I think Bazalani churches are like that, where God loves everyone.
Positive vibe.
God loves everyone, and you guys that are listening, that are sitting in the congregation, God loves
you. The loved one. Yeah.
You are the loved ones, and your neighbor who doesn't like to see your son succeeding in school.
Sure.
God is gonna show him flames. You that your husband divorced you, your husband is gonna die in hell, and God loves you. So it sounded like that. It felt like that, where you guys are the chosen ones. You are part of this academy, and you're gonna do great. So even when I was asked that question, instead of them finding out what did he say there that could have got Bo Saul to say that, even it was no, don't listen to those guys. You know how these guys are. When don't you worry. Someone even compared to him to there's another guy that Sbu works with. I forgot his name. I wish I had gotten his name down. He said, he said when similar to Gareth is rebellious, because I think when Gareth was talking, he spoke about himself being rebellious. It's like,
Oh.
and he was so chapped, he was so flattered by, so he is that clown of the class. And they're starting to create this image for him, around him. Because when he asked questions, he would ask like a lot of questions. They're like, he must be stopped. He's out of order. He's like the rebellion of the class. It was so weird, man. So weird. So DJ Sbu
How
is,
many
man,
people were in the seminar?
that's quite a lot. So, but I don't know if everyone is a student. I'm sure there are other people like myself. More or less 65. So more or less 65, roundabout, yeah. above 50, definitely above 50, yeah.
Oh yeah, they did say this is why you'll never make it on radio in this podcast.
It hurt him, bruh.
But
Yeah,
what he had asked, this is what he had asked. So they call guys make calls, make a call. This is the question that he asks Saul. Saul, how do you put on gloves with your thick fingers?
Oh yes, I remember the question. Like what?
Then Saul is like, "Yeah, man, sharp."
Yeah.
Then they're like, okay, man, ask a serious question. You're trying to be fun and it's not landing.
It's not working, yeah.
Then he starts going on about internships.
Yeah.
So do internships, they pay you little money. But he's not saying what he needs to say. He's just mentioning a lot of words that are just put together to make sentences.
Make him sound serious, yeah. Also to sound like
he's asking
make
a serious question.
Yeah.
She's like, "Ay, if you are struggling." Then they're like, okay, we'll give you a third chance.
Yeah. There was even a third chance. I remember.
And then the third chance now, the question he asks there is, okay, so have you guys stopped recording because you were drinking too much?
Oh yeah, I remember.
And then he's down because, like, actually, haven't you seen the Tales interview? And then and then that's when
it,
and then as he's talking, McG says bye.
Yeah.
Almost as if he's cutting. I think he just muted him.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh man, this guy was annoying, man. And then Ghost Lady wants to Faraz, and then McG brings him back.
Yeah.
And he's complaining.
Or when they were complaining about him, then he's still on the line.
Yes.
They just lowered his volume.
Yeah. So McG wanted them to speak freely. Even Saul's like, are you gonna take these things out, Mos?
I remember that part, yeah.
Impressed, man. But that's the thing.
But that's the vibe I was getting. Let's be honest, bro. So this is why maybe I'll be a bit harsh on people like DJ Sbu, is that, let's be honest, bro. Like, it's rough, man. People are like the youth, whatever, unemployment, all that. So people are looking out for little yana promises where they can find, right?
The youth needs motivation, bro.
Yes, but I'm saying amongst us, so others someone will just like, I just need a job, like whatever job I can find. And other people come and take advantage of them. They make them pay money, promise them jobs sharp. So there's that element of people who fall for that kind of thing. And there are also people who, like a DJ Sbu kind of person, it's like, I have so much experience in radio, and I can teach you what I learned throughout my years on radio. And I'm not saying he can't. I'm not saying, DJ Sbu does have a lot of experience in radio. I'm sure there's a lot someone can learn from him.
Sure.
And let me create an academy. And whoever comes, as long as they have money, they are welcome.
Sure.
And pump them up with that fake motivation that you guys are going to make it, and maybe and now with it creates legitimacy around. Now he brings his famous radio friends as well. I mean, to host the people, the names he hosted, I mean, you trust, like, wow, this must be a legitimate academy. I mean, imagine you went to a business academy and they bring in the famous business people there. You're like, yeah, I mean, the association with that academy creates that legitimacy. And I'm sure it is. And I'm sure it is legitimate. But I don't think they're honest about really trying to get these guys trained to get into radio. I don't think they care as much as they want to make it look.
What would care look like?
For starters, I'm sure. Yes, so for starters, a lot of this, I think even at Vets age, the art department had auditions. So it's not anyone can come as long as you're paying your fees.
Oh, sure.
So different from when you apply for a BCom, a BSc, where you look at your academics. There you had to submit portfolios. I remember one of the guys who had to submit a portfolio. So they still had to assess, is it, because this is a talent industry. It's not just let me teach you how to do radio and you can do it. So an element of, okay, guys, honestly speaking, not everyone can ever be on radio, like not everyone. So to suss out, okay, say guys, okay, you know, but I don't think that applies there. Anyone who just has the 3.5 can make it in.
That's how much they pay.
I think 3 point something, I can't remember the exact number, but it's definitely just above 3,000.
For what?
Firstly,
for a group of
I think it's a 12-week course or
lessons,
something. I think they give you exercises. So I'm assuming I don't know, I have no idea what type of exercises you are required to do there. But I'm assuming obviously you're paying for them to give you feedback on the exercises and whatnot. And then instead of hearing them being taught, so I don't know what they are taught in class, but I would expect someone to firstly give them how to ask, let's say, smart questions, for example, like the normal stuff that anyone needs to be taught when they're going to be on radio, like the stuff that works for guys that are on radio, like how to ask the right questions, how to hold a conversation, and all those things. And it doesn't sound like that's what they taught them. It sounds like they're teaching them how to pretend like they're on radio.
Like, sure, it's tough without having attended, I think.
Yeah,
maybe we should be saying this.
Yeah, I know I sound harsh.
There.
I know I sound harsh, but
at the same time, we've got an evidence of the throughput, like the outcome.
Exactly. Yeah. It's only one example, but we also have history of DJ Sbu. DJ Sbu is a hustler. Remember those business seminars he used to host, bruh? Centene, unlocking your inner potential, those kind of things. This is in the same line, bruh. But I mean, as long as you are paying and willing to pay, come and sit in, will make you feel good about yourself, will tell you that your fire burning inside, you can reach your full potential.
So I really don't want to make it sound like it's a DJ's issue and it's hustling.
Yeah.
The idea of motivating a bunch of people is serious. There's these guys, they're called success what. So my brother was very much into these things, into motivational speakers. I think we still don't agree exactly on its value. So I remember this time. Let me see what they're called. Success what, these guys. You can check them out.
Yeah, no, they are quite known.
Success resources,
I remember and South African, even DJ Sbu, when he was still doing that Metro show, he would bring the famous American ones. And they pay like 20,000 to sit in certain convention center, a weekend of finding your true potential, a weekend of reaching those guys. And they are charlatans, they are charlatans. But it gets bad when now you pretend like you created an academic course that figured out how to do something. I think that's when it starts to get like.
But that's what they're also selling. So I went with my brother Gallagher Estate there in Midrand.
Yeah.
And it was packed. The whole thing was packed. I'm sure there were more than 1,000+ people. All paid probably like 500 Rand or 1,000 just for that day. I couldn't finish the day because I had to do something back at Wits, I remember. So I went back. It felt very much like what you're saying now. This whole pumping of people with the Holy Spirit kind of vibe. Positive vibes, motivational language. And they brought out big motivational speakers from across the world. So from that angle, I guess what you're saying is, okay, sure, people do motivational things, but now you can't act like you've created a school and then in the school, as opposed to teaching, you are operating as if you're motivating children. And because in class, if you're in class in a school, in an academy, they will tell you your maths is wrong.
They won't say, don't believe people who say you failed maths. You can do this, your maths is right. You know what I mean? Like that's the definition of a charlatan. He's pretending like he figured out the formula to make success in radio. He found the curricula, the intelligence behind it, and he's going to impart it on those who are upcoming. And like I said, DJ Sbu had a good radio career. Sure, he could, if he really cared about it, he could sit down and create a curriculum for it.
You say had, is it in the past?
Well, I don't know if he's still doing radio. He's a businessman now. I mean, I'm not saying his career died out, but I'm saying he's now more business owner and all those things modern, exactly, rather than radio. So I'm not saying his career doesn't exist anymore. I'm saying it morphed into something else.
Sure.
But now he's pretend. You know what I mean? I don't think anyone fails in that cause.
There's a sincerity that's lacking.
And I don't know. I could be wrong, but I don't think anyone fails in that cause. It's like you're paying for the credibility of a certificate from being motivated by thinking. It's nothing. And I remember you guys, and when when we started the conversation, you said we can tell by the output, which is that Kwena guy. But you can also, let's trace back DJ Sbu's hustling tactics from the past. More Fire. Remember there was a story about the More Fire not being accredited by health and safety, and I think it's still not. If I could be wrong, I think it's still not. Instead of DJ Sbu finding out, or at least telling us what about More Fire was not accredited, he pushed the message that resonated with a lot of people, exactly, mostly, especially the people who are pushing for black businesses and all that, to say, instead of saying, guys, these guys didn't accredit my product because they said it had too much of this item or didn't do this and that test, he said, they hate me because I'm a black man trying to push black business, and I want to take over their white-owned energy drink businesses.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's DJ Sbu. That's how he operates. So he's a hustler. He's the guy who, when there was a Forbes cover page about him, instead of saying, no, guys, this cover page is not, he pretended, he allowed for the lie to go around, and later on said, no, I'm not the one who created that. It was a fan of mine and who thinks I deserve to be there. You know what I mean? So that's the DJ Sbu we're talking about it. So you can't say it's not him. He has the same personality as those guys you're talking about. And the philosophy of that school operates around the same premise to make people feel good, man, to just pump you up with the spirit, as long as you are taking out money.
This can be very deep, man, because it's an interesting thing. One, I don't want to pin it on him. That's one thing I don't want to do.
Why
He's
not,
a man operating in the world. He has to find avenues. I respect him particularly because of that. So SABC says don't market your product. He takes it up and he markets it explicitly and goes out of his way. I respect that, given the barriers to entry. What he did even with SAB and whatever, I respect that as well. The difficulty of getting
what did
into
do with SAB, remind me?
That it was not accredited, as you said, SABS.
Oh, the accredited. Oh, SABC.
Yeah. He's just pushing the buttons that he needs to push to push himself. Okay, how can I make a correct? I mean, Mzeke's music is not out of this world, but the character was enough to get us going. So he gets that. I respect someone who does that, because the way things are structured, if you want to move legally, it's not easy, man. And it's someone who I respect primarily because he's found a way to use those street smarts to really push where he needs to push. He's a hustler.
But when does being a hustler start becoming a con man now? A con artist?
I mean, he conned us for years, so I doubt it's coming in now. This guy has been conning us, right?
But that was but then where's that line? Because I don't think that was con.
But I don't think he's necessarily as insincere as we may want to make him out to be. Insincere in the sense that, how can I call it? So I'm saying it can get deep. He's trying to do things in a place where it is difficult to do them. Do you get what I'm saying? Yeah. What he's trying to do is difficult to do. How do you motivate Intwana Yasekas, as you would say, right? It's tough. I remember when he took, some kid was saying Sbu must help him, and then Sbu took a cooler box of More Fire and told him you can sell it in the street.
Yeah.
And
what did
he went to Pretoria. The kid had asked for some money or something. Then Sbu says, man, you can make money. Takes More Fire, goes on a Saturday morning, chills with the child in the streets. I'm sure the kid made like 3K or whatever the amount of money. They added a little bit more for that day. Gave him a bit of cash. He was selling 6 packs of More Fire on the road, much like DJ Sbu does, and the kid got the money.
And
Is
do
it
you think
helpful?
in that example? Okay, continue. Yeah.
Is it helpful? Probably not. But I get where he's coming from. So you are not coming from a society that has these structures. So he's harassing, he's hustling his way through them. And I want not to damage someone who's hustling his way through them. He's trying something. It's not easy.
Okay, maybe, yeah.
It's
Okay.
not easy to do stuff like Gareth Cliff and continue to have sponsors.
Yes.
But Gareth manages.
Yes. Okay. Let me see.
Can
Okay.
leave
Let me concede on this point.
without
Let
being
me
black.
concede.
There's a so I don't like to talk about South African issues, without some semblance of the structural dynamics that make life so much more difficult. I mean, the last time we spoke about language, just existing in this world means that when the rest of your life you are trying to trace back this language that was childhood from your existence because you had to speak English to survive in the world. So you literally have to live backwards. That's what you're doing from a linguistics point of view. Try to capture the proper way of speaking while every day you are listening to English music, you're speaking English. So it's the way of living that is so difficult. Then you've got someone like Sbu. He may be wrong. I'm saying the way with which we understand how wrong he is should take into consideration what he has to do without proper channels, if you get what I'm saying. He has to try and motivate these young kids without proper recreational activities, without proper throughput from how you can identify radio talent and put it on the radio, without an understanding without a proper channel of using their ideas that they may have with business and making a proper throughput into businesses, into startups. And I get the opportunity at least to organize, to sit with the banking guys. Same thing. To sit with the Department of Small Businesses. Same thing. We don't have proper structures. And here's a good example now that England is going to the Euro 2021 today, right? They took out a graphic this week, and in that graphic, they could pick out the development academies, yes, where all these guys who are now playing for England in this tournament started. So this is where they played where they were 6, 7 years old. They could, in this graphic, geographically locate each and every one of them. That we do not find ourselves in the 2020 Euros finals without this development. I sent it to one of the guys that I know, a friend of mine.
Not by coincidence.
It's not by coincidence.
Yeah.
And I asked him, can you do this in South Africa? Do you have that structural element where all of us don't have to live by kherezing, right? A good example, Jomosono, the big guy.
The legendary soccer guy, yeah.
Yeah, so Jomosono was credited with being one of the best scouts in South Africa. You get what I'm saying? So he was credited to be the best scout. He could find the right talent, the likes of Benny McCarthy, it's Omsemane, he found them. But in a recent interview, he explains how he got them. This is what he used to do. This is when you don't have structures. You have to kherez. And we are township, rural people. You live for survival. This is what he does. He would go to these tournaments, let's say down there in Botshabelo, where the soccer tournaments, and park far away from where the fields are. And then chill in a corner there at the back of the trees. And then send kids to go tell the star players that he just watched. Jomosono is calling you at the back of the trees. Pella, the direct way to do it is to speak to the team, speak to the manager, speak to the parents at times. So Jomosono would then walk around, drive around South Africa in his boot with contracts for players. Then call them, give them an envelope of cash, maybe 1,000 rand, and tell them to sign. The kids don't know what they're signing. They just want to play soccer. And this is Jomosono.
And this is the legendary Jomosono, yeah.
This is the legendary Jomosono. Is he right? No. Legally, he's not right. But structurally, there's no other